Good afternoon, everyone. This is Rochelle Seeger. This is the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky's Health for a Change webinar, all things 2020 census, review, new products, and Kentucky connections. Thank you so much for joining us here today. The Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky's mission is to address the unmet health needs of Kentuckians. We do that by developing and influencing policy, improving access to care, reducing health risks and disparities, and promoting health equity. The Foundation values integrity, respect, effectiveness, leadership, policy equity, and collaboration. A few things about the Foundation before we get started. The Foundation for Healthy Kentucky is led by a board of directors and also a community advisory council. That council currently consists of 63 Kentuckians from across the state, and you can learn more about the function of the council and nominating someone from your community on the Foundation's website under the About Us tab. The Advisory Council takes self-nominations, and you can also find a list of Kentucky counties needing representation on the Foundation Community Advisory Council. So learn more about that and nominate yourself or another colleague who would be interested in joining us to serve the Foundation's mission. Also, I wanted to let you know that in the fall of this year, on September 20th and 21st, the Foundation will host its annual Howard L. Bose Memorial Health Policy Forum. This year's forum theme will be Kentucky Vaccine Policy, Myths, Messengers, and Messages. Please mark your calendars for September 20th and 21st for that virtual event, and you can find more about the event on the Foundation's website, healthy-ky.org, under the Events tab. Again, my name is Rochelle Seeger. I'm the Community Health Officer here, and part of my role here at the Foundation is to coordinate and set up this training series called Health for a Change. The Foundation began Health for a Change in 2011 to support the health advocates, community folks, health department leaders across the state of Kentucky who are working to improve health in our state. The Health for a Change series has in the past been in-person workshops and also webinars like this, where we highlight Kentucky leaders who are making positive health changes in their communities, and we also offer a huge variety of resources like grant writing, coalition building, smoke-free policies. We also did a great series on the census as we were doing outreach for 2020 participation, and all of those events are archived on the Foundation's website under the Events tab, Health for a Change. That will include today's event. So there on the Health for a Change website, you'll be able to find a recording of today's webinar and also the full slide decks from our presenters here today. I welcome your ideas for future Health for a Change events. I love highlighting Kentucky folks who are doing great work, and I'd be honored to have you on this series. Please mark your calendar. The next webinar will be talking with Jan Chamness. She is the director at the Kentucky Department for Public Health, and she is leading the state's public health transformation effort. Also on our June webinar will be Jessica Browning of Owensboro-Muhlenberg Community Hospital and the chairperson of Muhlenberg County Health Coalition. And our third presenter on that event will be Caitlin Korlikowski. She's staff at Purchase District Health Department, and she is the Network Director of Purchase Area Health Connection. So please join us for the June 10th event, a webinar, Transforming Kentucky's Public Health System and the Critical Role of Community Collaboration. Again, Rochelle Seeger, so glad you all are joining us here today. Here's my contact information. I welcome an email. I also tweet for the Foundation at Kentucky Health Facts. And this afternoon after our event, I will share with you in an email the link to the PowerPoint slides today and also a link to a post-event survey. Please take just a few minutes today and send your feedback about the webinar and also your ideas for future events. Your feedback is extremely valuable to me so I can make improvements on this training. Finally, the foundation and numerous other Kentucky organizations, including Kentucky Nonprofit Network, Kentucky Youth Advocates, Kentucky Voices for Health, United Way of Kentucky, Prevent Child Abuse Kentucky, and more than 20 other groups joined together in April of 2019 to launch the Count Me In Kentucky 2020 nonprofit coalition that did fantastic on-the-ground work to raise awareness and outreach for our 2020 census. So I was honored to be a part of that group that came together and did that work. You can find out more if you want to learn the history of that collaboration at the Kentucky Nonprofits website there, Census 2020. And our first presenter here today with us is Erin Peabody. She's a partnership specialist at the U.S. Census Bureau, and I'm thrilled to turn the call over today to Erin. Welcome, Erin.
Good afternoon, Rochelle, and thank you so much for allowing us to be here to speak about the census and really to offer largely what I'd like to do is offer and extend an appreciation to our many partners across the Commonwealth for, as you just mentioned, the time and effort and energies in putting that messaging out there over the last few years, compelling Kentuckians to respond for all the important reasons and the impacts that something like the decennial census has. So a tremendous thank you to the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky for playing the instrumental role you did. And it's been a true pleasure working with you, Rochelle. And again, thank you for allowing me to be back and talk about the census yet again. And good afternoon to our listeners. Thank you for your continued interest in the census. I did just want to spend a little time reviewing what I would consider some really great successes here in Kentucky as far as the partnership base and the engagement, as well as I'll touch on some of the results, at least as they relate to Kentucky, that have been released by the Census Bureau with regards to the 2020 census. And I'm also going to point out a few tools that we do have available to you so that can be accessed right now, following the call, and then we'll transition on with Dr. Matt Ruther, who will join us in just a little bit later too. So, in terms of on to the next slide, in terms of the number of partners in the state, I think we started to lose track after about 4,000 partners, which was wonderful across certainly all of our counties. And really, the partnership program, particularly, again, during the decennial census, the once-a-decade count that we know, and I imagine you know by now, is critical to ensuring fair political representation, as well as millions of federal dollars that flow back to our communities, come back to our localities for things as important as public health and public education, youth services, infrastructure, economic resurgence and growth, and so much more. So essentially, partners are really the heart of what we do, the nervous system, so to speak, in terms of making the connections at a time we know increasingly when federal government surveys are not necessarily eagerly responded to. We know that we are experiencing increasing public distrust, whether it's a fear over confidentiality or privacy or other concerns. So partners being able to legitimize, being able to really provide significance and importance to the census, because it truly is something that's constitutionally ingrained in our country and is really the basis for how we democratically are represented. So thank you again for your work, your messaging, the social media work, the events, while we could still have them in person, to drum up interest and to help people fill out and respond to those surveys. And if nothing else, if you did yourself, doing your part, that was greatly appreciated. As far as, and one of the things that is so revealing and illustrative of good partners and the good partners that we had across Kentucky are our self-response rates. And we performed better this year in Kentucky than we'd had 10 years ago, and even 10 years prior to that. So just to explain a little more about what self-response is. So this is the percentage of people or residents who would have voluntarily filled out their census form, or would have called the information into one of the 800 numbers, or for the first time would have gone ahead and opted for the online option to fill out their census form that way. So we saw over 68% of Kentuckians did that. They did it without necessarily having to get a knock on the door, a follow-up piece of mail, so on and so forth. And why the census puts so much value on it, and we kind of talked about it a lot, and you may have read about it in the news, the various self-response rates, is because this is the gold standard when it comes to data. When we hear directly from respondents themselves, we are likely to get the most accurate and the best information we can about the people living in that house. And that's the same for any number of surveys that we do. The Census Bureau conducts over 100 surveys every year, including some that are ongoing right now. So we can hear back about number of children in a household, about how people are faring right now during the pandemic. That's actually a current survey and something I'll talk a little bit about later. But obviously, again, when we can make a case for people that these surveys are important, we can then elicit and get back quality, good information from them. And of course, self-response is only one way that the Census Bureau did collect data for the 2020 census. We also did, in fact, follow up by door, and sometimes multiple times. We had other operations around group quarters. So, for instance, for college students living in dormitories or seniors living in nursing homes, they're counted as part of a special operation, as are people experiencing homelessness, and that's a very close collaboration that's done with service providers and administrators in local shelters. So I just wanted to reveal the good work that was done, because again, partnership, the good partners in your work is often reflected, by seeing the great number of people who say, hey, the census is important, or the survey is important, I'm going to respond confidentially and provide that information. So as far as some of the initial results from the 2020 census, if you had not heard and were aware, the Census Bureau hosted actually a live webinar similar to this one last month on April 26th, and announced and released the first set of data that it is charged with releasing. And of course, this is back to that kind of constitutional importance and really the reasoning and statutorily the reason why we conduct the census. Those first results were the population counts, the overall state population counts for all 50 states. This information is so critical because it is then the basis for apportionment. And that's that process of taking the 435 seats within the House of Representatives and then assigning them to the states based upon their proportional population. So in looking at Kentucky's population, it's you'll see on this slide, as of that was what was announced just recently, a little over 4.5 million people, that is with an M, and that is representative of a 3.8% growth. Much as experts and data folks, and maybe Dr. Ruther will speak to this momentarily, but what we see on this map, you'll see the states that are experiencing, based upon the darker shading of that kind of green-blue color, so there's the states that were experiencing the greatest increase in population, as reflected in this 2020 census. The few states there in sort of a pale orange actually lost population, including neighboring West Virginia and Illinois. But again, the trend that was sort of expected, and I think this sort of confirmed, I think there are always a little bit of surprises and things that can be parsed out and looked at and discussed. But we're seeing, in terms of American migration and movement, more towards the south and more towards the west. As far as Kentucky and that all-important apportionment and what the population means as far as that's concerned, well, Kentucky maintained its 6 seats in the House, which it has for the last few censuses. The last time that it lost a seat was in 1990. It went from 7 to 6. So it has maintained that important seat. It was not necessarily close to picking up another one nor losing one. There were other states that were closer to doing so. So all in all, that was it was wonderful that we were able to encourage the response and maintain that representation in the Commonwealth. And then I should also mention, I know that the other, very desired information, coveted information at this point too is, okay, so what's next? What about that local information? What is the population in Jefferson County? What about Bath County, Kentucky? So that data, the local population and demographic data, for redistricting purposes and recarving those local legislative districts. So that's coming. It's still being processed and quality checked. And that is expected absolutely by September 30th of this year, if not before. So I can be certain to communicate with this audience, for more information about that. And there's going to be some links I'll share later too, so you can stay up to speed and hear as soon as that is released. So as far as, and I think I'm not sure if everyone else sees, some of the slides were a little skewed, and I know Rochelle tried to kindly fix that. So I apologize for that, and hopefully the version of the presentation you'll see will be a little clearer. But what I wanted to provide for you too now is, while we do have some of that data and it can be evaluated, by the way, there's some other really great interactive maps on the census.gov website. As far as some of those 2020 population figures, you can interactively explore any number of states and find out what the population loss or gain was, how that compared to previous censuses, as well as the apportionment in the seats and how they were distributed and how that has changed historically. So there's a lot to be found there on the main landing page of the census.gov website. But also, in addition, and I kind of alluded to this just moments before, we have a number of other surveys, and again, you may well be familiar with these. So there's other really useful information that can be explored even as we speak that is available, including relatively recently released American Community Survey data. So there are other tools at your disposal. And I want and hopefully encourage you to explore those, and I'll review some of those now. And I think this was the time too, Rochelle, we were going to pose maybe a question to the audience. I was going to I had pulled a little bit of demographic data from Jefferson County with regards to Jefferson County, Kentucky. And I'm not sure if that's been posed, or I can pose that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Erin. I will send this question to our audience. And the question is, in Jefferson County, according to the 2019 Census Bureau, which of the three occupational fields still experience the greatest gender gap, that is, male versus female employment? And if everyone wants to take a moment to select their guess from the options that are available there. While you're making your selection, I do want to apologize to Erin that the problems with the slides are my fault. A reminder, though, to everyone that you'll have access to the correct PDF of the full slide decks from our presenters will be available to you after this webinar today. And also, I want to remind people we will have some time on this call for your questions and answers. Please feel free to chat in your questions to our presenters via your Q&A there on your computer screen. I'm sending the results to the audience, and it looks like 100% of people said construction. Erin, tell us what the correct answer is.
Well, we have some really savvy listeners on the line, and they are in fact correct. So and we'll bump up. I'll come up to that slide relatively shortly, and I'll be able to clarify some more of that. But that is correct. So ding, ding, ding. Well done, everyone. So apparently they're pretty familiar with and tuned into some of those demographic resources already. So I rest my case. But if in case not, there are some of the data products and tools. I just wanted to review a few of them since we don't have a whole lot of time. One I had mentioned, and you very well may be familiar with, is that ACS, the American Community Survey, which is which is the source of the question and the poll that was just shared. The data.census.gov website. which is really probably the main kind of clearinghouse, if you will, for accessing and extracting all kinds of different reports and charts and spreadsheets on a variety of data that's provided by the Census Bureau, the Quick Facts tool, and the more recent Household Pulse Survey. So a little more, just briefly, about that American Community Survey. It is one that is ongoing. It surveys a random sampling of U.S. households, but is a source of data like the occupational data that was just referenced, but also, educational attainment, economic and income kinds of data. Do you have even running water in your household? So there's a real realm and range, over 40 different topics, in fact. So it is sort of an investment in time for respondents to fill out. But again, another reason why, if we can convey the importance of filling out the information, because it is so instrumental to then not only, of course, directing even some of the work that you may do and some of the clients and how you do your business and the grant writing that you do, but of course it also is responsible for really additionally, like the decennial census, directing federal dollars back to communities based on the data that's collected. So a very important survey, probably only next to the decennial in terms of the extent, the breadth and scope of the topics that are asked and surveyed on. And then data.census.gov is sort of that more recently sort of revamped and revealed all-in-one spot, if you will, a place to go and plug in and find out data about a particular geography or a particular kind of topic. There is an advanced search that allows you to filter even more and plug in, maybe you want to compare geographies, or you want to put in multiple kinds of topics and compare them across gender, but also race and ethnicity. So there's a lot of interesting data that you can, again, download in different formats through that really popular vehicle. And now on this next slide, so this is the table, one of the tables, and this is in reference to that polling question. And I'm sorry, too, if you can't see it. Hopefully, if you're able to download this in the PDF form, you'll be able to take a little closer look. But if that first downloaded table revealing the occupation, this was an ACS from 2015 to 2019, looking at gender and looking at the different broad fields of occupation. And that's where you can see that in terms of construction industries, we're talking about a 96% male occupation compared to 3.5% of females employed in that occupation. As for the sales and office work, that was 38% males in those fields compared to 62% female. And then in the computer and engineering and science occupations, while there's growth with a number of women, females entering that occupational field, it's still 78% male to approximately 22%. And please keep in mind these are estimates. There is a margin of error that I clipped out because you can create reports dependent upon how you would like them to look and line up. And again, this would just be one of, there were several hundred tables when I went in and I searched Jefferson County, Kentucky, looking for information on data.census.gov, and was able to pull just these two. The other one relates to poverty, and as it relates to educational attainment and gender, also in Jefferson County. So something to look at it later, just to give you some examples of what you can find. On to the next slide, and this is another tool for really drawing very quick information. It applies to geographies where there are at least 5,000, with a 5,000 population or more. But if you wanted to find out some quick data about gender, number of veterans, race and ethnicity, the languages that are spoken in a community or a county, a city, this is a great place to go to quickly really kind of pull up that sort of data. And if we have time, Michelle, we could put out that other poll question if we wanted, or we can move on. I know we're running up against a little bit of a time crunch here.
We're doing great. I'm glad to launch this next poll. Give folks a couple seconds to answer. Again, this poll question is based on the 2015-2019 Census Bureau data. About 21% of residents in the U.S. speak a language other than English. You have some options there on your screen. What percentage do you think that is in Lexington, Fayette County during the same period? So if you would mark your results, we can see, I don't know the answer, so I'm excited to find out what Erin will tell us the correct answer is.
Are we ready? Oh, all right. And the answer is, and this is Lexington, Fayette County, also based upon that American Community Survey data that ended in the year 2019. So we'll have fresh data as we continue to collect information. But that percentage in Lexington, Fayette County is 13.1% of residents there speak a language other than English. So I'm not sure if that was relatively surprising or not, but again, an example of, and again, to provide the caveat that there are margins of error with this information, but they are really helpful benchmarks as our communities change, and as we're going to be seeing with the 2020 census, how our demographics change. And really, again, there are just all sorts of different data points you can pull depending upon what you might need and you're looking for any number of reports or grant proposals you're doing. So please don't hesitate. My information is going to be provided here shortly to reach out to me. We also have a data dissemination specialist, assigned in Kentucky. I'm located in northern Kentucky and work mostly as a partnership liaison, but I'm always happy to connect anyone with something, or if they're having trouble downloading something or finding it, to do so. So, and thanks for participating in these polls. It's really interesting to see what people are finding out. And then finally, really just one of the final tools that is proving to be really valuable and popular. I was just reading a piece in the U.S. News and World Report that referenced this really real-time, essentially, data that's coming in. But the Census Bureau has linked arms with a number of other federal agencies to collect information that's needed about not only businesses, small businesses in the country, but also households and how they are faring in terms of the pandemic and COVID-19. There's really some great information that can be, you can peruse. This next slide here, the Household Pulse Survey is one aspect of that data work being used, again, very commonly at this time to elevate and to advocate on behalf of those that have been really disproportionately impacted, for instance, by the pandemic. But some of the questions that are asked, again, we pose these to households. We are so appreciative of their responses and when they participate, but we're hearing things about, for instance, expected loss in employment income, how telework arrangements have changed, food security, housing security issues. And so I wanted to provide a little snapshot, one of the more recent snapshots in the image that's on this slide. You can see a picture of the United States, and the states that are more darkly shaded in green are more impacted by the topic of difficulty paying and having access to food. The question was, over the last week, have you experienced difficulty accessing food? And I do know in terms of partnerships across Kentucky that this has always been a concerning issue and a leading issue, especially for a lot of nonprofits. But we can see during this pandemic that it's even exacerbated that. So at any rate, lots of very good information there you can find. And so, yes, moving forward, I encourage you all to stay in touch. My contact information is going to be provided on the following slide, but here on this particular one, there are a few different ways and resources available to you. One thing I really did want to highlight is that we have some data summits coming up. In fact, we have a University of Kentucky partner hosting the Food Security 2021 Data Summit for the Census Bureau, so we're delighted to have them on board with us to talk about that important issue of food security in the country and how census data can be used to help inform and guide policy making and decision making and response. So there are many more listed on health related topics, emergency management. There are many more now through August 2021, so check that link out for more. We have plenty of registration openings. We encourage you to sign up and join us. We have a Census Academy where you can take courses even. You can learn about that data.census.gov and how do I download a table and how do I plug this into a report this way. Please join us there for guidance and help and support for those kinds of more technical, aspects. And then we do have a news and updates subscription that you can sign up for to hear, for instance, the latest on when the local redistricting information becomes available and so on. And I just can't thank you all enough for your support of the 2020 census, for making it relevant, making it important in the state of Kentucky, and helping people get counted and ensuring their political voice and important federal dollars back to our state. So thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. And I'm sorry, I apologize, Dr. Ruther, for running over a little bit, but sir, I would love to hear what you have to say and have, to add to this conversation. And we have next with us Dr. Matthew Ruther with the University of Kentucky, also director of the State Data Center here in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. That was really interesting. Again, my name is Matt Ruther. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Women and Public Affairs at the University of Louisville, the director of the State Data Center here. I'd like to echo what Erin had said about Kentuckians pulling together for the census. There were lots of problems with the census. A lot of barriers, a lot of obstacles, and our response rate was really good in spite of all those obstacles, and in spite of the fact that the country shut down 2 weeks before the count. So I think that we were all pleased at how that turned out. I'd also just like to take a moment to answer these 2 questions that Amy Swan has posed in the chat box about congressional representation changing over time. That's certainly true. And in fact, there's a lot of disparity in how many people are represented by each congressperson per state. In Delaware, you have 990,000 people per congressperson. In Montana, about 540,000. So, the question of whether to change the number of seats in the House of Representatives might be a little bit outside the scope of this discussion, but it's interesting to look at the visualization. And Amy also points out that American Fact Finder is no longer kept up to date. The new data.census.gov tool has replaced that. And I believe that if you try to go to American Fact Finder, it will take you to data.census.gov. So the State Data Center is part of a network that was set up by the Census Bureau back in the late 1970s to disseminate data from the Census Bureau itself down to the local areas. So back in this time, of course, we didn't have the internet, and everything was released in books, and the state data centers maintained those books, and people came into these libraries to look up census information. And of course, over time, that role has changed dramatically, although we still are responsible for maintaining this relationship with the Census Bureau that helps out the state. So we have a number of goals and objectives here. Primarily what we do is data dissemination. We get data from the Census Bureau to the general public. Like I said, this is no longer the public coming in and looking at books. More so now it's over the internet, people calling and asking us questions, how to get something. And we also do our own analyses and consultations. So we will occasionally release reports that look at how the population is changing. We will have a large report coming up once the decennial census results are released. And we also support the Census Bureau in its programs. So we will test software for them. We will help carry out surveys, so the boundary and annexation survey, for example, where the boundaries of geographic areas within the state are reported to the Census Bureau. We will assist in that. And we also maintain a network of affiliates. So our affiliate network is made up primarily of the area development districts. I'm sure that everyone is familiar with these. There's 15 organizations across the state that do social development, economic development. We also have affiliates that are nonprofit organizations. Of course, the Foundation for a Healthy Kentucky is one. Kentucky Youth Advocates is another, and some local organizations within the city of Louisville, and state and local governments. We work closely with several of the cabinets and several of the city governments. So with Louisville Metro, with Lexington, Fayette, and some others. So the research that we carry out varies depending on what data is being released at the given time. Like I mentioned, post-census we'll have a big report coming that is released on the population change within the state. We also do some health information. We worked on the community health needs assessment that Metro Louisville carried out a couple years back, and we write smaller pieces for local publications or state publications that touch on particular topics like immigration, population aging, children, growth in children, things of this nature. Our website, which you can see the link here, is our primary portal to the data and products and services that we offer. I should note that the State Data Center does not maintain any data that the Census Bureau also maintains. This is to avoid duplication and to be more efficient, basically. Anything like American Community Survey results, all of the hundred surveys that the Census Bureau carries out, all that data will be on census.data.gov. What we will have on our website are things that we produce ourselves. And there's three data products that we work on in particular: population estimates, population projections, and the vital stats data. So on our website, there is a data download section. Within this download section, you'll see each of these different segments. Population estimates are estimates of what the population looks like at any given time. Of course, with the census just happening, the estimates are sort of put on the back burner, but we do make them every year for the state, the area development districts, and the counties within the state. In addition to actually estimating the population, and this is done through mathematical modeling, not through actual surveying. In doing this, we also come up with estimates of the components of population change, so births, deaths, and migration, natural increase, and internal and international migration. We also carry out population projections. Projections are predictions of what the population will look like in the future. And so we do these for the state of Kentucky and for each of the component counties. The timeline for population projections sort of depends on when data is released. We last did them in 2016, and we will be releasing new population projections by the end of this year once the Census Bureau releases county-level data for us to use as the base of these projections. Our last projections show that Kentucky is expected to grow by about 8% over the next 20 years, so through 2040. And this growth is going to be concentrated primarily in the central counties, ranging from northern Kentucky to Louisville over to Lexington. Many of our counties are expected to lose population or begin losing population in the next 20 years. And so this is something that we'll be tracking with these next population projections once they are released. We also have access to vital stats data. This is in cooperation with the Office of Vital Statistics and the Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services. Primarily, vital stats is births and deaths. We do not use marriage data in this office. This little graph here is just showing births and deaths within the state going back to 1960. Obviously, the number of births has been declining as birth rates have been going down over time, even though the population is, of course, increasing. And, of course, the number of deaths has been increasing over time as the population has been getting older. So we often get calls for vital stats information. We are allowed to disseminate it in most cases. We are not allowed to give out any vital stats information at the sub-county level, though. So that's as low as we can go in terms of giving aggregate counts. We also have available on our website some neighborhood profiles that we did in partnership with Metro United Way. Unfortunately, these are only for the city of Louisville and the surrounding counties, Shelby, Bullitt, and Oldham County. But there are about 150 of these neighborhood profiles that have a wealth of information. Right here, I'm highlighting the health information that we use for these in these profiles. Much of this health insurance coverage, disability status, food access is available through data.census.gov or through other government programs. Violent crime, birth and death measures, of course, are estimated from vital stats data and from local police departments. But if you are local to the Louisville area, these are a great resource for smaller level, tract level, essentially, health characteristics or health information. We do have other sources of health data listed on our website under the heading Data Sources by Topic. These vary in what is offered by the different organizations. One of the primary sources for health data, of course, is the CDC. The CDC has what is called the Wonder data, and this is used for, these are population estimates that are used for calculating different vital stats rates. CDC also has a number of data sets that correspond to different CDC surveys. So the National Center for Health Statistics has the National Health Interview Survey. There is the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and of course the BRFIS. And if you don't know the BRFIS, it's the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. And the BRFIS is a really important survey in terms of health data because it is our primary source for health data at the local level. And so I'm going to spend the rest of this presentation talking about that local level health data. And this is not something that we produce, but it is something that is newly available, and I think it's a fantastic resource for anyone that is interested in local level health. The project is called the Places Project, and this grew out of a prior project that the CDC was running that was called 500 Cities. In 500 Cities, the CDC calculated health measures for neighborhoods within, of course, 500 cities. And since then, they've expanded this project and now provide health information for all census tracts across the nation through the Places Project. The primary source for the Places data is the BRFIS, the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, as well as the 2010 decennial census and also the American Community Survey. And this data is based on some very sort of high-level modeling techniques that accounts for differences, that accounts for relationships between the characteristics of a place and the health factors within that place. The BRFIS had about 8,000 respondents in Kentucky in the year 2019. So this is a fairly large sample, but it's not, of course, enormous. And so when you start looking at health information down at this level, of course, you start running into some issues with small numbers. So the Places Project also provides confidence intervals around their estimates. So you can get an estimate of, say, the smoking rate within a census tract or neighborhood, and then a confidence interval around that to show you how certain you can be of that particular estimate. The Places Project has a number of different measures that it tracks. Health outcomes you can see listed here. Some of the more common ones: cancer, heart disease, stroke, COPD, but also some that you probably haven't seen at the local level before, like arthritis and asthma. There's measures on health prevention. So does a person have health insurance? And the types of screenings that they have received in the past year. And then, of course, unhealthy behaviors. So drinking, smoking, inactivity, obesity. The Places data is available at a number of different geographic levels, at the county level, the city level, at the zip code level, and at the census tract level. And census tracts, for anyone that's not aware, are small geographies that the Census Bureau uses to enumerate population. They have about 4,000 people on average. Some are larger, some are smaller, and we typically use them to approximate neighborhoods. So this is a really fantastic data resource because typically most of our data, our health data, is available only down to the county level. Getting data for the city and for the zip code is really quite extraordinary. Although it seems like although it seems funny to say, health data usually is not available at that level. So just an example of what the Places Project has. I have a number of maps here, but I'm going to just focus on this one here. This is the city level data, and so you can see within this Places data, you can download the raw data with the confidence intervals yourselves if you want to do your own analyses. They also have a very nice mapping tool, so you can actually create the maps right on their website. And so, as an example here, you can see that the city of Winchester has a I think this is a smoking rate of about 18%, and then it gives a confidence interval around that, usually 1 or 2 percentage points. I'm sorry, that smoking rate was 26%, with a confidence interval of 24 to 27%. It also gives you the population here, so you can get a sense of the size of the population that you're looking at. Of course, larger populations, you are likely to have a little bit more faith in the numbers. Smaller populations, it's harder to get good estimates for. Of course, we have the same information for zip codes and for census tracts across the state. And so I really encourage people, if you are interested in local level health, this is a great place to look for data. If you need any assistance with accessing this data, this is of course not Census Bureau data. This is comes from the CDC, but I would be happy to help you work on this. So I think that I'm on time. I'm not exactly sure, but in any case, I have completed my slides. Here's some contact information. I'm always happy to answer your questions or to help you find something. Although we are affiliated with the Census Bureau, we do try to help out with any type of data product that users are looking for, be it health data, economic data, demographic data, or whatever. Also, please check out our Twitter account. We tweet out fun facts, and of course, check out our website. So that is all I have. I'm going to then turn the floor back over to Rochelle. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Ruther. We have allowed some time for questions and answers, so please feel free to chat in your questions here today. Dr. Ruther, first a question for you. How concerned are you with current population growth within the state? Your thoughts on that?
So over the 2010 to 2020 period, Kentucky grew by 3.5%, give or take a percentage point, while the United States grew by 7.4%, give or take a couple of percentage points, tenths of a percentage point. So basically, Kentucky's growth is about half that of the whole U.S. So this is a little troubling. Obviously, you want to sort of be in the average when you're looking at population growth. Why population matters, of course, is because we want people to look at Kentucky, businesses to look at Kentucky as a place that is vibrant and robust. And so, our population growth is steady but not overly strong. And some of this is because our population loss in the eastern and western parts of the state are coupled with, stronger growth in the center. So, of course, there are states, West Virginia, Illinois, that have actually started losing population. Of course, that's a much worse scenario, and so we're certainly not at that point. But it is something that we do want to keep an eye on going forward. There's also a question here, Rochelle, about how the State Data Center is funded. We are funded through the University of Louisville directly. At one time, the state funded us through a special line in the budget, but now we are funded through U of L's general budget.
Great, thanks, Dr. Ruther. Erin, some questions for you. This topic of data available at a smaller geography than statewide, where can folks find information from the Census Bureau about smaller geography?
Sure, that's great, Rochelle. And I would probably just refer back to that data.census.gov link is probably the best place to go. It sources a variety of the, and actually I'll see if I can find it too. I think that would be the place where there would be a variety of different, there we go, I don't know if that's showing up on the screen or not, where economic survey, the decennial census survey, information and data, American Community Survey, and others as well that are collected. And so that would probably be the best place to begin to look to plug in, a city, whatever geography of your choice, and see what is, in terms of what's been most recently made available. Of course, again, we wouldn't see some of that 2020 census information yet on a smaller county or city, or certainly census tract or block level, but other surveys, again, which again, this would probably be the best place that captures a lot of that data that folks can pretty readily manipulate that and publish it in different ways, download it in different ways.
Thanks, Erin. Another question for you. I know I personally saw a census door knocker, Census Bureau person in my neighborhood in 2020. And this question is, how do I know if a survey issued by the U.S. Census Bureau is legitimate? What can I do to be sure that I'm not targeted of a scam or other fraudulent activity?
That's an excellent question too, and I know we saw that repeatedly, and I think information around assuring the public about not only the questionnaire and its legitimacy, but how their data is protected and the kinds of really sophisticated, cutting-edge privacy and confidentiality methods and processes that are applied to the data, because it says of equal importance, really, honestly, at the end of the day, is as zealously important to the Census Bureau how to protect and ensure confidentiality as it is to achieve the most, highest quality data that can possibly be ascertained. But I would encourage everyone, again, as we've mentioned before, there are other surveys that are ongoing. They can come to you via a census, someone knocking on the door. It can come through the mail from the Census Bureau, and you may even receive a phone call. Some of the current household pulse surveys that are being conducted are happening in all three of those different ways, so that we can reach people or try to follow up with them to gather information. So one of the best places really to go and to be sure of, that you are, working with a legitimate piece of, a questionnaire or an email, really again, that main landing page, www.census.gov, there is actually a sort of a block there about, did you receive a questionnaire? Do you want to confirm that this is a legitimate, and real survey that you have received? And from there's some different information in terms of the people that come. They should have identification and a particular kind of badge, and that kind of imagery is provided, and carrying even a bag and that has a Census Bureau logo on it. There are certain hallmarks that are detailed on that website about security and avoiding fraudulent activity that you can kind of read more about. And ultimately, there are phone numbers and emails provided that you can absolutely, in that moment, make a phone call or ask the person to come back or put that letter aside until you get that confirmation through a 1-800 number. And I'll go ahead and just provide that now, and maybe I can also write that into the chat space or the question space. But that is 1-800-926-8282. And so that is a number that can be called at any time to determine the legitimacy of a survey.
Yeah, thanks, Erin, and I'll also include that phone number in the follow-up emails to our participants. Erin, briefly, you mentioned quality. What kind of quality assurance work is the Census Bureau doing now around the 2020 census?
Oh, absolutely. And I know, again, another a topic that many are keenly interested in, and particularly concerns around the pandemic. And while we shifted and accommodated and even extended our timeline for collecting data, I know that our leadership is been very committed to engaging, in particular, outside sorts of experts and independent evaluators. There was a 2020 Data Quality Executive Guidance Group that was commissioned some months ago by our leadership and director. So that work is ongoing. Of course, there's internal evaluations and audits that are happening, deduplication, looking for any gaps or discrepancies or what they call anomalies in the data, which, by the way, are relatively common and do happen. But not only that, so the data quality that is being done, and there are even additional metrics here in 2020 in terms of how that data is being evaluated, but it's also being published earlier and more abundantly than it has in the past. So there is a 2020 Census Data Quality webpage that anyone can go to take a look at these metrics. Some of them are explained in rather technical terms, but there's a lot of information there. Again, if you were to Google 2020 Census Data Quality webpage or go to the website and plug in Census Data Quality, then you would be able to find that as well. Or I can always direct folks to that web page as well.
Thanks so much, Erin. We will include that link also in the follow-up email. Finally, immense gratitude to our presenters today, Erin Peabody of the U.S. Census Bureau and Dr. Matt Ruther of the Kentucky State Data Center. And thanks to each of you, the participants on today's webinar. Gratitude for sharing this hour with us. This webinar series is for you to support your work across the state. So I welcome your feedback, and I will send a follow-up email this afternoon. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a great afternoon.